I widowed at 37. He was 40 with 3 young daughters. And then it was just more efficient to have the business myself. I started a consulting practice called AC Advisory, and it became one of the top 10 financial advisors to cities and states and airports. My top client was New York City. O'Hare was an important client. The state of Connecticut was an important client. And I ended up advising issuers on over 150 billion in transactions. It just happened over 20 years. I sold the business after that.
Yeah, 150 billion. Hello, Money Movers. Welcome to another episode of Her Money Moves. And today we have with us a very special guest to me. She is my mentor and role model, Adela Cepeda. She is a fierce Colombian powerhouse, a sought-after financial expert, a board member of several prestigious boards, and a fierce advocate for equality. She is also the co-founder and chair of Angeles Investors, and she's the GP of Angeles Ventures. It is such an honor to have you here, Adela. Thank you.
Staci, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here in Miami and with, the Angeles Investors. And it's such a great time to be in the business and in an organization that's seeking to help Latinos do better financially, like you.
Yes, such an important mission. And that is the whole purpose of this show is, financial wellness and empowerment. And you have taken it upon yourself to take charge, to be bold, and to move the needle by starting Angeles Investors. But of course, that's not where your journey began. Can you, share your, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started in the financial industry?
Wow, thanks. Well, I came to the U.S. as a little girl. My parents brought me when I was 6 to New York from Colombia. And my father had a business there, which he sold. And then he became an employee working in air conditioning and refrigeration. That's what he knew. My mother continued to work in bookkeeping. That's what she knew. And the expectation was that the kids would become highly educated and be professional. Whatever that meant, it was just repeated to us night and day. And so I grew up with that very high expectations about what I was to do. And, I did go to Harvard for college and study economics. I switched to economics pretty early on. And very early on, I had an experience in school where I was looking for work because I had to work to support myself, to help support myself there. And I got a job at the student agencies, which basically is students running all kinds of businesses. The manager that originally hired me went on to Harvard Business School. So I was very intrigued by what you did as a business person. And it became my career, my interest. And, I went right to investment banking from Harvard, and then I did marry and moved to Chicago, continued in investment banking. So to be clear, although I later became an entrepreneur, I have over a decade of experience in investment banking, and that's really where I learned everything: how to analyze financials, how to present financials, how to present compelling arguments to motivate a company to go public, to sell, to buy, and to hire you to do the work that's required in those transactions. And so I would say I had a lot of training. I developed experience in training others in the field. And it was the core of what I ultimately did, because I never diverged from being in the capital markets. The only thing I did was go on to do it for myself as an entrepreneur.
And so when did you decide that you wanted to make that transition from investment banking over to starting your own company?
So to be honest with you, I had 3 children, and the long hours of investment banking and heavy travel was taking a toll on, my family life. And I decided that, I would just, with the third child, I would just take a little bit of time off. It didn't last. And 6 months in, I did go into, my own business with other women. We established a money management firm. It was fixed income. And then just as I learned financial analysis, capital market analysis, and how transactions in capital markets are executed while I was at Smith Barney. When I had my own firm the first time, that's when I learned how to market because I really wanted it to succeed. I didn't have somebody above me or beside me. I had to go out with my partners to get this business ramped up. And it was a fabulous experience. Having said that, I think that there are tremendous opportunities in the corporate sector, and we shouldn't cede them. We should have our turn into high-level executive positions in corporate America and all the goods that come from that as well. That wasn't an opportunity because of, like I mentioned, my family situation. My husband also became very ill. I widowed at 37. He was 40, with 3 young daughters. And then it was just more efficient to have the business myself. I started a consulting practice called AC Advisory, and it became one of the top 10 financial advisors to cities and states and airports. My top client was New York City. O'Hare was an important client. The state of Connecticut was an important client. Cook County was a very frequent client of mine. And I ended up advising issuers on over 150 billion in transactions. It just happened over 20 years. I sold the business after that.
Yeah, 150 billion.
Well, these are the largest cities and states in the country. And when they sell bonds, they need it for major works that cost billions of dollars. And they're looking to issue $1 billion or $2 billion at a time. Mm-hmm.
So reflecting back on your corporate career, what are some of the things that really helped you transition and the skills that you got there to be a successful entrepreneur and manage $150 billion?
Well, that core training in financial analytics was critical to everything I've ever done, so that it's kind of second nature to me to understand a balance sheet, an income statement, compare. That's part of what you do when you're a banker is compare how your client or prospective client compares to the competition. Why are their margins higher or lower? Why should they be worth more? Why is there an inefficiency in the market if there is one? I learned to do that and to ask the questions. And I think that also was, critically important in deciding to go on my own, but understanding what were some of the parameters that had to be reached in order for the business to succeed. I definitely learned a lot there. I also trained a lot of people so that I could hire people and train them to do what I needed them to do for AC Advisory and our clients. So it was a great education, the deepest of which was an understanding of the American capital markets, which I'm a great admirer of. I think that they're the most efficient markets in the world, and any lapses, are quick because of the high regulation, are quickly fixed, and this allows American entrepreneurs to have a very powerful vehicle for exiting and for raising capital, the public markets. So it was a great training to everything that I do now. It was critical. And so an understanding of the capital market ecosystem, I think, has given me an appreciation for how critically important it is to build companies early on, and what do they need to be strong and to grow and to potentially reach different parts of the capital system. And I love that.
So, as you know, this podcast is all about women's financial empowerment and financial literacy. So, can you share some tips and strategies for our audience of, how important it is and how influential it can be if we lean into it and learn?
Well, I always say to young women that are still deciding what to do professionally, to me, finance is an area where you can shine if you develop an interest in financial analytics. Because if you come to understand financial analysis and do your comparisons, and the observations are yours and they're true, and it's not a question of he versus she. It's like, who has the best observations? The numbers bear it out. So if you're right, you're right. And I think it can be a very powerful area for women. No question about it. It has been for me. Like I said, I've never deviated from being in capital markets. I think it's the right place for women. I also think, though, and I'm going to be the first to admit, financial statements are intimidating. And you say, oh my God, that's a lot of numbers. What do I? Well, they can also be broken down. Financial footnotes, they can be broken down. You can try to assess what they say, how they represent the financial statements themselves. There are courses you can take for that. And I said before, I'm a great believer in the capital markets and in investing all along the cycle. That's why today, what I'm mostly involved in is venture capital. And it's a very powerful segment of the capital markets because it's where you can get incredible returns because it's early. It's the Apples, the Googles, in our case, the Canelas, that are going to be extremely successful companies later. And what we wanted to do at Angeles Investors is democratize that and make sure that women, like all of us listening in, can have an opportunity to invest in those. You don't have to be a celebrity to invest in those. You don't have to be a billionaire to invest in those. And so we've created a vehicle that enables you to invest modestly, but your investment, my investment, everybody else's investment adds up to a significant investment for this company with a lot of future ahead. And it's important to understand all that. Also, Staci, my understanding is there's a significant transfer of power, of finance, of funding to women as we're aging and we live longer. For those that are married, a lot of funds are going to go to the women. We have to be prepared to understand what this means and make decisions. Do we invest in stock and debt? What stocks? What debt? How long? How much in venture capital? Can we get into some private equity investments? It's important it's just like you learn how to cook, you learn how to invest, and it should be like that.
Yes, it should be necessary. It is necessary.
It's essential because if we don't, especially when you're a Latina and the facts are so atrocious, we earn 50 cents on the dollar. What kind of retirement are we going to have when we can't work and there's zero income? At 50 cents on the dollar, realistically, how much can we save? So it's very important to be educated and to be in control of our financial situation and try to plan for later on, because the reality is we're living very long and we can't count on working all that time. So how do you retire successfully, i.e., independently, and with the resources for your care? Because no question about it, as you get older, different parts, require different parts ache and require more attention. So,
Yes. Wow. I had my 22-year corporate job at Chevron, and I was managing billion-dollar projects, and really just had experience with stock market and the Roth IRAs, just saving for retirement, and real estate. Not having any exposure to venture capital and private equity. I mean, knowing what an accredited investor is, knowing secured debt, unsecured. I mean, just all of this jargon that I just wasn't exposed to that, over the past 2 years since I went to Columbia and did their venture capital and private equity program. But actually, it's about taking action and doing. That's really how you learn the most. And so, I ended up joining Angeles Investors, and it has been such an incredible journey. I mean, not only meeting and becoming, so closely connected with these amazing people from all over the world, but us, really working together and evaluating and doing our due diligence on these different startups and coming together to invest in them. I mean, has been just such an incredible experience. And can you share, what was how you got it started? What is the vision for it? Where do you see it going? And I'm just so grateful to now join the board.
well, I was just going to say thank you for joining us on this mission and for just yesterday being officially added to our board. Look, where we were going with this, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of founders, and the mission, the need was clear. We are the most entrepreneurial group in America. The growth in employment in America is driven by jobs created by new businesses formed by Latinos. Tremendous number of new jobs. What happens though? These companies that are started do not reach a scalable, significant level. And why? Because 2% of venture capital funds go to minorities. That means that Latinos, who represent over 20% of the population and are doing more than their share in terms of creating jobs with new businesses, are not receiving the capital from institutional sources to create businesses that can become strong and powerful and employ thousands of people. This is bound to create an overwhelming problem, because as our population grows faster and lags economically, well, that's the formula for social problems. So the mission was clear. How do we help bring capital to Latino entrepreneurs? And I have to tell you, every day I have to pinch myself, because I feel so fortunate that there are so many other people that see this gaping need and are willing to invest. I mean, we're now a group of over 250, soon to reach 300 members. We've now invested over $7 million. So 5,000 at a time, creating a pool of over 100,000 to back an entrepreneur. It's just means so much that we are contributing this way to our own economy, in a sense, because to be clear too, in addition to creating disproportionately the number of new jobs in America, we are also, from a GDP, gross domestic product basis, as large as we would be like the fifth largest world economy, bigger than France, bigger than many nations, the Latinos in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge market with tremendous demographic growth because a substantial percentage of it is very, very young. And a huge percentage is 18 to 35, which is the most powerful purchasing demographic. And how do we capture this and turn it into a good thing? Well, the most incredible thing is finding a lot of professionals and others that have had success in their career that want to invest in those coming up. That's just special.
Yes. And you've also just raised Angeles Ventures Fund 1.
And that is true because we're trying to accelerate that opportunity, bringing those opportunities to entrepreneurs. So now, in addition to the Angeles Investors Network, coalescing to help raise funds, David Olivencia and I are general partners in raising a fund to help entrepreneurs directly and maybe in a larger way. Yes, I'm excited about that. I didn't think at this point in my career I would be raising money again and I would be looking to run a fund. But I am, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yes. And not only are you the GP of the fund and co-founder of Angeles Investors, but you also are on quite a few prominent boards, the UBS Fund and LCDA and...
True. In terms of corporate boards, and yes, sitting on the LCDA board, Latino Corporate Directors, that's important because that organization kind of leads the call for there to be some parity of inclusion in the boardroom. And they say, look, this is not okay to not have Latinos represented on your board. And no one else really does that. And so it's important for us to support them. I have been active as a board member since the 1990s when I started serving as a director of a couple of closed-end funds. I developed expertise in mutual fund governance. And so I do sit on 3 mutual funds, including UBS and Mercer and Pathway Funds. And I've also been on a bank board for over 20 years and 10 years, a small local bank in Chicago called Amalgamated. And about 10 years ago, I joined the board of BMO Financial Corp, which is the U.S. banking business of BMO Financial Group, a Canadian bank. BMO Financial Corp has now become one of the top 10 banks in the country, having bought Bank of the West and extended directly west from Chicago, Milwaukee, straight west all the way to the coast of California. And we're at an exciting time now where we're melding these two organizations, and it's going to be fabulous. I'm excited about that, and I really enjoy my board work. It's a way, again, of bringing financial governance and other experiences to the table that makes the decisions.
Wow. And can you share some tips and strategies with our audience of who aspire to be on a board? You know, what are some of the steps that they can take?
Be the best at what you do. It's always important and essential to understand finances to be on a board. It's very hard to just, even if you're, marketing is all driven by finance. You know, where do you invest in order to get the higher returns on on the marketing plan. So you can't be afraid of the numbers, and let people know. But it's important to also be on boards that are not compensated. And there is a lot of education like that LCDA, for example, does to keep you current on issues in the boardroom. And you should, listen in and participate. But the important thing is your career and excelling there in what you do.
Thank you for sharing those tips.
I think it's not okay that we are not represented as we should be. And so if I have an opportunity, I'm going to do what I can to introduce my fellow directors to people that are of diverse communities that have the talent. And, this country is kind of segregated. So, you live in one part of town, you don't know people of different races. I feel so lucky that I straddle so many ethnicities and that I can be a part of various communities, and then I can help introduce these people to opportunities. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, we were literally at the Angeles Investors Summit in Chicago, and you're like, oh, here's the actor from Top Gun. Adela's like BFF.
Well, he is fabulous. Bashir Saludahin, and he was in Top Gun, and he's great. And I interviewed him for Harvard when he was just a kid, and we've stayed in touch. And yes, whenever he can come to our Angeles events, he's very welcome, and we're thrilled to have his star aura around us. So big shout out to Bashir.
Every episode, I always love to find out from my guests. And I mean, you are a woman that I'm just admire so much.
Thank you.
Just your heart, the impact that you've had on so many people's lives and in our communities, and on me. Like, you inspire me every day. But I wanted to ask you, what are you dreaming bigger about next?
Well, I'm dreaming big with Angeles, growing it to an organization of 1,000 members, and finishing the raise for our fund, and having many successful exits. Yes. And not just for what it means for me financially, but what it means for those who trusted us and invested with us. And I want them to succeed, to see that it was a trust well taken.
Well, thank you, Adela, for being here. This was so special, and I'm just happy and grateful to be on this journey with you, with Angeles Investors and with Angeles Ventures, and just appreciate you for being here and sharing your knowledge with all of us money movers.
Thank you so much, Staci. What you're doing is phenomenal, and trying to get more women to understand financial literacy and financial opportunity. And thank you, because you could take the lessons just for yourself, but you want to broaden it to everybody. And I couldn't be more admiring of you and what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much.